Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurtzbacher, and today we're celebrating a major milestone, 200 episodes of the Inspire Campfire podcast and 5 years from the inception of the idea. Our guest is, well, me. This is a first for the show. No guest, just me, sitting down to have a conversation. And honestly, I'm not sure how it's going to go. Why would a 46-year-old guy with a happy family and a successful small business in real estate decide to start a podcast about adventure? Was it a midlife crisis? Was I looking for something more? Was I trying to escape? The mission of the podcast has always been to inspire people to listen to the voice inside that calls them to adventure. Over the past 5 years, I've had conversations with hundreds of people who chose to listen to that voice. And somewhere along the way, those conversations started to change me. So today, I want to pull back and talk about what keeps showing up, where this started, where it's been, and where it might be going. I'm a little excited. I'm a lot terrified to be sitting here just like this, just the two of us, you and me. But if there's ever been a time to pull up a chair and have a real conversation, this feels like it. So to you, the listener, welcome to the campfire. Oh, man. Okay. This is definitely a first. It's quite awkward, actually, and we're going to get into this a little bit during today's episode, but this is the first time I've ever sat down like this and spoken to the camera. I'm imagining myself listening, even though this is not being recorded live, but I got to say that talking into a microphone and looking at a camera is very, very different than what many of us know is essentially a Zoom call where I get to sit face to face with somebody and get to hear awesome stories and interact through conversation. This podcast for me has largely been that. It's been like sitting down with the person that I'm interviewing to hear about their story over a cup of coffee. And that's really what this has been for me. It's been about connecting with awesome people and just getting to know them through a very casual conversation and hearing their story and allowing myself to be inspired. And frankly, the fact that we get to record it and share it with others has really just been a bonus. But it's my jam. Sitting with people, having conversations, it's incredibly inspiring. And I feel so honored to have been able to have these conversations with so many incredible people that have inspired me and frankly have changed me. And I really hope that you as the listener have been inspired as well. Hopefully have taken some of the inspiration that you've learned to set off on some of your own adventures. So thank you to you for listening and for being open to inspiration and to some of these incredible stories. So back when I first started this podcast, the show, what was it? It was intended to be ordinary people telling their extraordinary stories of adventure. And I just kind of want to share a little bit of the background of sort of the framework that I've essentially used on every podcast episode. So back in the late 1940s, a guy named Joseph Campbell wrote this book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And I read this, but I confess it's dense and it was really hard to digest. I think I got the gist of it, but essentially the hero with a thousand faces is basically meant to portray that we all have a story within us. All of us, you, me, each of the guests on the show, everyone, we all have a story. And when you dissect the story of the hero, there's this common theme that happens throughout every great story. And it shows up over and over again in movies and TV and in your own life. We start with a person that we're going to call the hero. And that person, sometimes they have a problem. Sometimes a problem is thrown on them, or sometimes maybe it's just boredom. Maybe it's just, a need for aliveness and that feeling. And they feel these desires and these wishes to step across the threshold into an adventure. And maybe they feel that and they choose to step in, or maybe they're just thrown into it. But often in what Joseph Campbell calls the hero's journey, our hero sometimes resists the call. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. But then finally, at some point, something pushes them across the threshold into their adventure. And it's usually this transition point where there's no turning back. We're doing this thing. And again, whether it's something that was forced upon you or something that you chose to do, at some point we step across the threshold and now we're in it. And once you're in the adventure, there are all kinds of things that happen along the way, the struggles, the challenges, the people that you meet, the experiences that you have, and all of these things that basically encompass the adventure itself. And ultimately, during that process, there's a changing that happens. There's a transformation that happens. And at the end of the adventure, there could be, some major catastrophic things that happen, or it could be some sort of positive change. But ultimately, that transformation is something that we bring back. And so we come back from our adventure, and now we have the opportunity to share our story with other people. And if you look at any movie, this framework is kind of what happens throughout all of these storylines. In fact, I think one of the things that attracted me most to Joseph Campbell when I first learned about it was the fact that he was the inspiration for the Star Wars movies. So George Lucas considered Joseph Campbell to be a mentor. So the hero's journey was a huge inspiration. And so being a Star Wars geek, that was just, it definitely connected with me. So when I created the podcast, the idea was to investigate this hero's journey that people have. And that's kind of what we've done for 200 episodes, including this one, which is the 200th. We've had 199 episodes with people and their hero's journeys. But frankly, this whole adventure of doing a podcast was a hero's journey for me, because there definitely was a resistance to the call. There was a stepping across the threshold where there was no turning back. And then 5 amazing years and 200 episodes of unbelievable conversations. And I feel very inspired. I feel changed. I feel evolved. And I'm very excited now to be here with you today to share a little bit about this journey. So again, thank you so much for listening. So appreciate it. But I want to jump into, and again, this is sort of the framework that I follow with all of my guests. I usually start with an overview of what the thing is, what the adventure is, and then we get into a little bit of background story. And so I wanted to share with you a little bit about how this podcast started. Honestly, I think one of the coolest things for me to do in order to take us back to when this thing started was to talk about something that actually happened along the way. So last year in 2024, a door opened to me through one of our podcast guests, Michael Wennington, who invited me to be part of a experience where each of the participants in this experience that he was putting together would write a short book. 9 months later, I have self-published this book, Campfire Within, 3 Simple Steps for Reigniting Your Inner Fire. And this book is a bit of an origin story of the podcast and also goes over some of the adventures that I've kind of experienced along my own journey. But this was so cool because it represents an opportunity and a door that opened for me as part of the podcast. And it was definitely something that was very unexpected. But I wanted to share with you the introduction from the book. It's short. It's only a couple pages. I'm going to share with you the introduction to Campfire Within. So it starts, introduction, purpose is elusive. We made camp on the bank of the lake, surrounded by forested wilderness. Beside us, our campfire was just getting started. It was summer, and the clean northern air was cooling off, but still comfortable. The fire was more for ambiance and cooking dinner than it was for warmth. Across the lake, the sun was setting behind a row of conifers that lined the water's edge. The still lake was a mirror, reflecting blended shapes and colors painted across the sky. Our daughter was out on the lake in a canoe, filtering water for us to drink. A dark silhouette of her in the canoe was the center of focus, surrounded by changing shades of pink, yellow, blue, and gray. Driving to Minnesota from North Carolina, we passed the Bob Ross Museum, which caught our attention because we had recently found ourselves mesmerized watching reruns of his TV show, The Joy of Painting. Bob was an artistic genius that could transform a blank canvas into an amazing natural landscape on his 30-minute show, while entertaining viewers with his unique 70s look and his quirky, enthusiastic commentary. The scene before me felt like stepping into a real-life Bob Ross painting. A trance-like state of awe washed over me as nature unfolded its masterpiece in real time. Colors mingled and danced, vivid and alive, with happy little trees surrounding our campsite in all directions. Yet this time, I wasn't just an observer. I was part of the creation itself, woven into the vibrant energy around me. It was as if the same gentle force that once guided Bob Ross's brush was now breathing life into the world around me, flowing through each tree, each stroke of color, and through me. There was a loon singing a gentle song. In the distance, we heard a pack of wolves, despite dozens of individual howls and a split second of primal fear. The sound was more peaceful than frightening. Park rangers taught us wolves rarely allow themselves to be seen. They wouldn't be looking for us. We were in the Boundary Waters canoe area near the Canadian-US border, and we'd paddled the entire day to reach this spot. We encountered other people during the day, but the campsites were completely isolated. There was no one else around now. It was the most remote camping trip I'd ever taken, and the furthest away from civilization or other people that any of us had ever been. The lakes of the Boundary Waters are always stunning, but the magic of sunset was overwhelming. Enveloped in sensory experience, I felt awe. Pride accompanied our efforts to reach this spot. Peace resided in the still and quiet setting. Gratitude filled me as I watched the show of colors before my eyes. Feeling fully present, I noticed a distinct feeling that contrasted with my usual pursuit at home. I often ponder the meaning and purpose of life. Why am I here? What am I doing with my life? Whose life am I living anyway? I've spent a lot of time reading books, writing in journals, taking workshops and seminars, all in search of these things. Sitting at our campsite overlooking this amazing Bob Ross landscape, I had a realization. 2 weeks into our adventure, I'd spent no time thinking about meaning or purpose. This wasn't intentional. I just didn't. A question came forward. Why spend precious time thinking about purpose when you're living it? I don't know my purpose, why I'm here, or if I'll ever know. Trust me, it's not for lack of putting in the time to think about it. But sitting there in the wilderness with my family, our dog, and nature all around, I felt a sense of accomplishment, gratitude, and peace. In those moments, meaning and purpose didn't matter. I was on an adventure, and my campfire within was burning. That takes me right back to that spot in the Minnesota Boundary Waters. And it was actually those moments that I described in that introduction that the idea for Inspire Campfire hit me. Hey everyone, it's Scott here. Did you know that the members of my real estate team, W Realty Group, are listening to their own voices that call to adventure by setting big goals? Some of those goals include planning trips to Bali and the Kingdom of Bhutan, buying investment homes, and running the Chicago Marathon. At W Realty Group, we support and encourage these big goals and want to help turn them into reality. We're currently looking to add new members to the team. If you know a great real estate agent in the Charlotte, North Carolina area that would benefit from being part of our team, please send a text, an email, or give me a call. And know that when you support W Realty Group, you're also supporting this podcast. Thanks for listening. So maybe a couple of months actually before that experience in the Boundary Waters, I was on a daddy-daughter camping trip with my daughter. And we were just camped out on the beach, actually. It was one of the coolest camping trips. And we were just chilling out. It was a beautiful day. We were just kind of having an afternoon nap or chill time in the tent. And I had that same sort of overwhelming feeling of how much I just love being outdoors and I love camping. And just my daughter and I were kind of laughing and just we kind of shared this moment, and we talked about how we felt like people that didn't have the opportunity to get outside and experience nature like that and just have that freedom we just felt they were missing out. And how cool would it be to be able to create something to inspire others to get outside and to go camping? And it was a fun, neat little idea that essentially died there, or maybe went to sleep for a little while there in that tent. So it was just a couple of months ago, or months later, when we were in the Boundary Waters, that I was revisited by that same feeling in that excerpt that I just read to you, sitting around the campfire. And that realization that I hadn't thought about meaning and purpose for 2 weeks. And it's just this reminder that, like, out there, I was really in my happy place. I had my family with me. We were surrounded by nature. There was just nothing missing. It was just perfection. And again, this overwhelming feeling hit me, like, gosh, I just had this like innate desire, this innate feeling to want to share it. And I think that maybe as part of the hero's journey is when you have this experience that affects you so much, you just naturally want to share it with other people. So when we got back from the Boundary Waters, that was my mission. The idea that I was going to create a podcast was born. And I spent the next couple of months figuring out how to do it. How do you create a podcast? I'll get into that a little bit later in the episode, but essentially that was the beginning. So I came back, and now I had to start thinking about like what the format was going to be and how we were going to share this. But to me, as I kind of said earlier in this episode, I'm a very curious person, and I love sitting down face to face, one-on-one with people and hearing their stories over a cup of coffee. I do have my cup of coffee, and you're here with me today. So thank you for that. So to me, that was the ideal format for me, was to sit down and have individual one-on-one conversations with people. And so I thought to myself, like, who are some people that I could talk to? And immediately ideas just started coming to me. My great friend, Carl Miller, introduced me to Josh Sutton, who he worked with from Lynchville, Virginia. And Josh and his wife, Cassie, had recently finished a through hike of the Appalachian Trail with their 5-year-old son. And I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, what an unbelievable first episode. And I remember reaching out to Josh. Josh, if you're listening, I was super, super nervous when I first called and asked if you'd be a guest on the show. But he was so gracious and immediately said yes. And I mean, it set off everything right in the right direction. That Josh and his wife have done huge things. He's been on the show twice now. I just have been hugely inspired by him and his story, his family story. And what I discovered is that people love to talk about adventure. So finding guests and finding 200 people ask me all the time, like, how do you find your guests? Honestly, it hasn't been that difficult. Like, a lot of people have reached out to me with just a desire to share their story. And I've had very good luck when I hear of an interesting story, reaching out to somebody. They've been very, very open to sharing their story. People like to talk about themselves, and they like to talk about their stories. And I love hearing them because it's incredibly inspiring to me. So that's kind of the beginning. And man, what a journey it's been. And now I'm sitting here with you 200 episodes later. So I guess like one of the big takeaways there was just this whole like crossing over the threshold. And the reason why I share all of this is not just to sit here and tell you this story, but maybe you've experienced some things like this before in your life where you've had this idea and you've been like nervous about putting yourself out there or doing something that you think you're going to love, but you're afraid like what people might think. And I definitely can share that was a huge barrier for me. As I said, when I called Josh to ask him if he would be my first guest, I'm thinking in my own mind, like, why would he want to talk to me? I'm a real estate broker from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I like to go camping, but what qualifies me to create an adventure podcast? But I stuck with it and was able to overcome some of those doubting thoughts. And ultimately, just like Joseph Campbell said, I was able to step across the threshold, and it definitely took a major leap of faith. And I think that probably was the hardest part for me, was getting started. These conversations have been, for the most part, incredibly easy because, like I said, they're just casual conversations with people. So, 200 episodes and 200 different conversations and a lot more people, because a lot of the episodes had more than one person as a guest. And I think it's really interesting because after having had all of these conversations, I've started noticing certain patterns that have shown up. And a lot of it's the same patterns that sort of keep coming back over and over again. And I kind of wanted to share some of those patterns because I think maybe you can relate, but these are things that have really resonated with me and helped me kind of think through like who the person that I want to be, continue to be going forward is. So just to kind of cover some of these patterns, I think the first one would be that people often choose to go on difficult adventures. There's this sort of distinction between almost two different types of guests that I've had on the show. The first would be those who choose to put themselves in a difficult situation and go on an adventure, and that's by choice. And then there's been other people that have been thrown into something. They didn't ask for the circumstance, but they had to work their way through it. And I think it's really interesting in a lot of ways. What happens after they cross into the threshold is still a similar story. They still go through the trials and the tribulations, and they still go through the transformation, and they still have that return where they come back a different person. So what I've learned is it doesn't necessarily matter if you choose to enter the adventure on your own or if you get thrown into it. Like either way, you're going to learn from it. You're going to become a better person, and there's going to be a story for you to tell when you come back. But I think it's really interesting when people choose to enter into a difficult adventure. There's a lot of things that happen to us in life, and when we get thrown in, there's just nothing we can do about it. It's like, you can't look back. There's no choice. But the interesting one is when people choose to go into adventure. And I think the reason for it is, and there's a great book by Michael Easter called The Comfort Crisis, and it's about this exact topic. In a lot of ways, the world that we live in has become a little too easy and a little too comfortable. We can press a button and have our groceries delivered to our front door. We've got access to information right in front of us with our phones. And so getting out there and doing something difficult and forcing ourselves to struggle, we get to experience this whole idea of the hero's journey. So I don't know that I'm going to go too much further because I think you can relate to that. I hope you can relate to that. But I guess it's just this great reminder that challenge and difficult circumstances are really, not to be cliche, but I guess the spice of life. It's the thing that helps us to grow. And so we don't really grow when we're comfortable. We grow when we're uncomfortable. And that's just a repeated pattern that I've seen come back over and over and over again. One of the other things is the idea of getting into nature. I think that what I've learned, and one of the repeating patterns is like, I'm always really, really curious and interested to hear the different places that people go and the different adventures that they go on and the natural beauty that comes with those places. And, there's so many amazing places in the world that I want to go and I want to experience, but really it's not so much the place that matters. It's the people that you're with, and it is the experience itself and what happens on the journey that really matter. But I think what does matter with nature is that nature and natural settings, they provide us with this really quiet space. It's a place where you can disconnect. Like, again, the world that we live in is just, it's getting crazier, constant text messaging and emailing and phone calls and just, this idea that everything has to get done immediately. It's the speed at which life moves in our daily world today. This is nothing new to you, my friend, but this idea that you can go out into nature and just fully disconnect and find that space and find that peace. And what I love about it is that when you're out there, you don't have anything else to do. There's no distractions. You can just be there. You don't have to worry about who might be calling. And the best situation is when you're somewhere where your phone doesn't work because there's no cell service. It removes the distraction. And when you bring in a challenging experience and other people, it just adds to the ability to have this incredible like bonding experience and just to really immerse yourself into the experience itself. And I think a lot of what it comes back to is it's just you're creating the circumstances to be able to be fully present in the moment. Isn't that really what we're after? To just feel like fully alive and fully present in the moment, not necessarily thinking about what's happened in the past or what we're going to be doing in the future, but just feeling really alive right now where we are. Nature helps us to do that. Natural settings help us to do that. And that's definitely a pattern. That's definitely a pattern that I've noticed when people get out into these remote settings, that they're able to disconnect. And I just think that's a beautiful thing. It's certainly one of the reasons why I love to get out into nature. But I love to do it with other people, and I love to couple it with something physically demanding, something mentally challenging, because there's the struggle and there's the feeling of overcoming that struggle that helps to make you a more confident person. But when you do it with other people, then it adds the element of having this sort of like bonding experience. I've been on a lot of adventures recently, and even since I've created the podcast, where there's been shared struggle, and that shared struggle creates this bond. And when you get back from the trip, like, it doesn't matter if you didn't know that person before, like, you're just going to connect that positive experience you have with that person, and you're like deep friends forever. I've got people that I've been on trips with before that I only spent a few days with, but I have nothing but positive memories of them. And they're the kind of people that I think if I saw them 5 years from now, it would be like we're right back on the trail. Those are the kinds of people that we want to spend our lives with. And those are the kinds of people that we want to be surrounded by. And the next one would be that every person that I spoke to on this show, although their experiences and their mindset and a lot of what it took to get them through their adventure is extraordinary, as we reflect back and hear their story. At the end of the day, we're all ordinary people. Every guest on my show, ordinary people. You and me, we're ordinary people. But it's the action. It's the saying yes. It's the stepping across the threshold. And it's just doing. It's getting in there and doing the thing that allows the events to unfold so that our story can become extraordinary. So in the next section of my book, which I'm not going to read, but my mentor, Robert Holden, who has been on this podcast, once gave me a quote, and I hopefully won't botch it here, but it was something to the effect of a question: would you rather talk about the kingdom of heaven or experience it directly? And I love that quote so much, because for me, I want to get out there. I want to feel the aliveness. I want to feel the experience. I love talking about it, but I like talking about it so that I can get inspired, so that I can then take action, because it's in the action where the extraordinary things happen. And that's definitely one of the patterns that has come back over and over again. I've very much enjoyed sharing some of my own adventures, and this podcast has given me an opportunity to do that. So I think one of the things is that when I have been surrounded by other people and hearing these adventure stories, it's really opened my mind to what's possible. And it comes back to the fact that we're all ordinary people. So each of the people that have been on this show and have had these extraordinary stories of adventure, they all started somewhere. We all start somewhere. And so just being physically present with somebody, even if it's just over a Zoom call, you get this opportunity to hear this person, and over time, it starts to change you, and it starts to make you go, wonder if I could do that. Wonder if I could. It's happened for me. Hey everyone, it's Scott here. This podcast is a passion project for me because I absolutely love adventure. And it's thanks to the effort of my residential real estate team here in Charlotte, North Carolina, that many of you know as the W Realty Group, that this podcast gets funded. This awesome group of people have unmatched levels of competence and caring for our clients. If you know of anyone looking to buy or sell a home, our team serves the Charlotte, North Carolina market, but we can also help you find an agent anywhere throughout the US or Canada through our highly connected network. When you support our real estate business, you are also supporting this podcast. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your referrals. So last year, I got to go to Mount Everest Base Camp, and that was an unbelievable experience. And I don't know that that's something that even would have crossed my mind had it not been for this podcast, but I talked to a lot of people that had done that adventure. And while I don't think that summiting Mount Everest is necessarily on my bucket list, I've had several guests that have summited Mount Everest. And to me, that's like the goal of all goals. It's the roof of the world. It's the highest elevation on our planet. And it's amazing. And it's like a metaphorical goal that we use. Like, what is your Mount Everest as a metaphor for the big goal? And I have to say that while, like, mom and dad, if you're listening, I don't think this is ever going to happen, so you don't have to worry. However, when I was out there, when I was at Mount Everest Base Camp, I remember looking across at the tent area and the Khumbu Glacier and the areas that go up. And, there were seeds there. I think prior to that trip, like, there was no chance ever. But at Everest Base Camp, I remember looking up and thinking to myself, maybe that mindset was not there before Inspire Campfire for this guy. And so I think being in the presence of others that inspire, taking action and taking these steps, these little steps that progressively grow, is just, for me, has been just an incredible inspiration and confidence builder for me. So thank you to each of the guests on the show that have provided that inspiration, and for those that I've traveled with that have shared that journey with me. And I always love sharing our shared stories of adventure. And some of those have been just so much fun for me to share with the group of people that we've done those adventures with. So I think I started to share a little bit about how the podcast has changed me. And I've kind of alluded to that a little bit in the beginning. I think probably the biggest one is what I just talked about, was the confidence building, just the confidence that gets built through experience and through taking action. But I think what's even cooler than that is the doors that unexpectedly open when you set out on a journey. And I will say, actually, this is another pattern that I've noticed on the podcast that is just kind of coming to me now. And that is, when you step out on the journey, things have a way of working themselves out. There's usually guides that you meet along the way, or people that are there to help. And there's just, things have a way of working themselves out. And when you show up, like, it's unexpected, but when you show up and trust that all will be okay, amazing things happen. And so, just an example on this podcast I already gave, like this book, Campfire Within, which I got an opportunity to write and publish, that never would have happened. It was an opportunity that was presented to me because of this path that I had been going down, and some of the friendships that I made. I absolutely want to mention my great friend, Karen Dark, who actually wrote the preface for the book. Karen, if you haven't heard, she's been on the podcast several times. She is paralyzed from the chest down. She had a climbing accident in her 20s and has gone on to be one of the most inspiring adventurers that I've ever known. And I'm so grateful to Karen Dark for inspiring me and for being an encourager of me along the way. And if you haven't heard any of the episodes or all of the episodes with Karen on Inspire Campfire, I highly encourage you to go and listen to her story, because her story alone is guaranteed to inspire you. But some just incredible things, like, if it weren't for this podcast, Karen and I wouldn't be friends. And I shared the story with you about Everest Base Camp. Karen actually went with us to Everest Base Camp, and that was one of the most incredible experiences, to take part in a team of 15 people that were able to trek to Everest Base Camp with Karen. A lot of people thought that we were nuts, but Karen has such a strong mind, and the team that went with us, it was amazing. And we talk about, like, the incredible things that show up for you along the way on an adventure. Boy, if you listen to that episode about our experience with Karen, there were just, every single day, there were things that just showed up for us, problems just left and right, and then solutions that just appeared. And so I guess the pattern and the learning for me is that when you step into an adventure, you've got to have a level of trust that everything's going to be okay. And there's a mindset there. There's certainly a mindset, but it truly has been amazing to me. I mean, I could spend an entire podcast episode just talking about the amazing things that show up when you have the courage to step across the threshold and go do the thing. So there's two questions in terms of, like, how I've changed that I want to share, because, again, I think that maybe you felt some of these things too. But after having experienced my own hero's journey with this podcast, there's two questions that come up. What do I want more of in my life? And what do I want to let go of? And I think that when I really think about what I want more of, adventure, of course, but there's always another adventure. And, I guess as I get older, body starts to slow down. Maybe the adventures kind of slow down. I hope not. I hope I'm climbing mountains at age 93, like Alfredo Aliaga was when he did Rim to Rim. Incredible. But I think that really, for me, it's that feeling of aliveness. It's that feeling of being fully present, and to be able to experience that as much as possible. Look, I know we're all going to have ups and downs in our lives, and there's always going to be times of stress, and those are the things that shape us. But when we're making decisions about like what we want to do next and what we want our future to be, like for me, it's really tapping into those things that make me feel like fully alive. And I think it's that feeling that I want more of. And if I can follow those types of experiences, then I will continue to go along this path of trying to be the person that I really want to be. So the other side of that is, what do I want to let go of? And I think it's just the nonsense. And my friend listening, I hope you can relate. I think it's the nagging things that suck us into a place of thinking that we're the center of the universe. It's the little things that we get caught up in that don't matter when there's the great things on the line. When there's big life things on the line, the little things that stress us out don't matter. And so that's what I want to let go of, is I want to let go of those little nagging things. And it's not the external stuff. It's not the circumstances. It's how we react to them. For me, it's letting go of doubt, letting go of fear, letting go of resisting when the world doesn't meet my expectations. I think these are the things that I want to let go of. You may have noticed, if you've listened to this podcast, especially early on, I focused a lot on asking guests how they got past fear. And I think a lot of that came down to the fact that I was afraid. A lot of these adventures that I've gone on, I mean, well, what would happen if this happens or that happens, and catastrophizing in my own mind, maybe not going on even bigger adventures because of fear. And I think that the guests of Inspire Campfire have really helped me to see that everybody's afraid, and fear is a good thing, but we've got to keep it in check. Like, we can control the fear. We don't want the fear to control us. And I think that's possible with practice. And we can overcome it by taking little steps, a bit at a time. So that kind of brings us to where we are now. Before I kind of go forward and talk about like what's coming next, I just kind of want to take a quick pause and talk about the podcast itself, because a lot of people have asked me what it's like to create a podcast. How do you create a podcast? What's the operational side look like? What do you love about it? What don't you love about it? And I do want to just acknowledge a couple of people real quick. Ryan Dean, who was there with me right from the beginning and helped me create this brand and create the podcast, and was the podcast producer for many, many years and episodes. And then Brian Murphy, who took over for Ryan when he moved on. Both of them, so thankful for them, for the tech side and for the production side, and for they made it very, very easy. Ryan made it very, very easy for me to just be able to get on a platform with a guest and have a conversation and let him take care of everything else. So I have to say that, like, in creating the podcast, having an awesome team of people that can help with the tech side and all the logistic stuff has been invaluable. I'm an overthinker, and if I had to do all that stuff on my own, I honestly don't think that this thing ever would have happened. But having great people that were able to kind of set up all the infrastructure was incredible, and I'm super thankful for that. And it made this podcast really enjoyable for me, because really what it's been for me, as I said earlier, is coffee conversations with people where I get to be curious and ask questions, hear people's stories, get inspired. That's all this has been for me, and I love it. I've absolutely loved it, and would love to continue to have amazing conversations with amazing people. That's what's kept me going. The passion has been the relationship building, the inspiration to think bigger and to get out and do big things. And just so grateful for that. What are the parts that I've struggled with? What's hard? Well, some people may or may not know, if you've done a podcast before, it is absolutely a labor of love. It is a passion project. And certainly that there are people that have figured out a way to monetize a podcast. That's not been my experience. This is something that I do because I love it, because I love having the conversations with people. And I love being able to share it. And I love, frankly, I love to get feedback from people like, hey, I listened to the episode on so-and-so, and I'm going to get ready to go do that adventure. I love that. It fills me up. So exciting to be able to feel like, there's been a difference that's been made. But it's certainly not been a business venture, I guess I would say. And so I think that part I've struggled with a little bit. Certainly, if I'm completely honest, at the beginning, I think that there was some hope that at some point Inspire Campfire would become a podcast by itself that would essentially be a sustainable, business generating show. And again, that's not been the case for me yet. I'm not going to say that door is closed, but that's the piece that has been, if I'm honest, the piece that's been a struggle for me is looking at this as a business. And I know that with any venture, if you want it to be successful and sustainable, you've got to have that piece in place. But it's been a challenge because you've got to have both parts of that. And I will also say that the promotional part of Inspire Campfire is also a bit of a challenge. I'm not somebody that loves social media, because social media has become something that is one of those distractions that I go to nature to get away from. But it is part of the world that we live in today. I'm very proud of the social media campaigns and elements that we've put out there to be able to share our episodes, but it's not my favorite part. My favorite part is you guys, the listeners. My favorite part is the people that I've got to have conversations with. And my favorite part is the adventures and the inspiration that's come out of it. So thank you to all of you for that. And I guess with that, I do want to just offer a little bit of gratitude. I really felt it was important to take a step back and do this episode 200, and do this as a thank you. This is for me. It's a reflection. It's also for you. I hope you as the listener have felt some of the things that I've felt. And I hope that this journey that I've been on has maybe inspired you to step across the threshold and do your own adventure, regardless of what the outcome is. Do it because it's a calling and that you feel that you need to. I want to thank you, the listener, for being there. And I want to thank all of those listeners who have encouraged me and inspired me and offered feedback along the way. Even just those quick little comments, the text messages, the emails. Hey, I listened to your episode on such and such. I loved it. Thank you. I love that. I really enjoy it. And to the guests that have been on this show, the inspiration that I've received from every single guest has been unbelievable. And it doesn't matter if it's been somebody that's done, the Mount Everests, or just, a little adventure in their backyard. Everybody's got a great story, and I've enjoyed every single one of them, and I've found inspiration from every single one of them. So I want to say thank you to each of the guests that have been on here. I also want to thank all of the people that I've had an opportunity to adventure with since starting this podcast. And there's been a lot of awesome trips and adventure experiences that we've been on together. Friends for life, for sure. There's been so much bonding that's happened. Every person that I've adventured with, I hope to adventure with again. And for those of you that are listening that we haven't adventured together, reach out. I like adventuring with other people. And so it's kind of my jam. So please reach out. So I guess I want to leave you all with just a quick little talk about what's next. So 200 episodes. What's next for Inspire Campfire? It's been 5 years. The idea came to me in the Boundary Waters. And, in the introduction, I said, was it a midlife crisis? Was it escape? I think it was that purpose is elusive. You just don't know. You got to go on this journey. When I was in the Boundary Waters, there was actually a quote painted on the wall of a building in Ely, Minnesota. And I don't remember if it was before we went into the woods or after we had come out, but it was an awesome quote. It was, "We don't travel to escape. We travel so that life does not escape us." And I'm going to have to put the name of the person that said that quote in the show notes because I want to give credit where credit's due. But I think that that's really true for me. I don't know what was going on at the time that I created this podcast, but I'm so happy that I had the opportunity to set off on this journey and to create this thing and have all of these conversations. And I really, really hope that it's provided some inspiration for everybody that's been involved. And frankly, I don't know what's next. This episode's going to come out in June 2026. I'm going to take the summer off. I've got a bunch of adventures planned with some awesome people. And I think we're going to come back from each of those adventures and we're going to have to share those stories with you all with future Inspire Campfire episodes. But I also think that this is a time for evolution. And I think that there's going to be some reflection over the summer and on some of these adventures to think about the future of Inspire Campfire. So that gives you all some time to send me any feedback. My invitation to you as the listener is to let me know what you thought. What did you love? What didn't you love? What would you like to see more of? Please reach out to me because I want to hear from you. I want to thank you all so much for supporting and encouraging this show. And I have to leave with, because I've asked every guest on every episode, when they make a movie about your life, who's going to be the actor that's going to play you in your movie? And what's your movie going to be called? So I've already answered this question before on other podcasts. The answer for me was originally Ty Burrell from Modern Family, the goofy real estate dad. And that's very fitting. But a couple of years ago, I dressed up as Ted Lasso for Halloween. It was a hoot. I had so much fun. I shaved the beard. I kept the mustache. It was a beauty. And so I'm going with Jason Sudeikis. I hope he'll play me in the movie about my life. Although he's really funny and I want it to be funny, but the name of my movie will be Campfire Within, shamelessly. And I hope that he's able to portray that person that recognizes that purpose is elusive. And we just need to step across the threshold and say yes to adventure and trust that everything's going to work out from there. I hope you've been inspired today. I hope this podcast has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure. And I hope you'll honor that voice by saying yes, by taking the first steps of your journey, and by returning home to share your story with others. Thanks for listening. Now go get outside.